Hello, everyone. I'm Mitchell Ryan Darcy, and I'm about to watch for the very first time Never Say Never Again. It is currently, out of every James Bond movie that has been released, this is the only one that I have not seen. So, Never Say Never Again. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm kind of expecting this to be bad because, in general, from what I've heard, Never Say Never Again is like usually on the bottom of the list when people go to rank the James Bond film franchise. And as well as any of the, including Casino Royale, the Woody Allen, Orson Welles, Peter Sellers one. Casino Royale, that one is very. I've seen that movie several times, and I still. It's so bad, but at the same time, it's like I keep rewatching it because it's like I kind of forget how bad it is. I'm like, oh, it can't be that bad, and I rewatch it. I'm like, yeah, no, it's bad. I'm still kind of trying to understand the overall film in general for that, but that one's usually the most bottom of the list, and then it's like this one's usually top 5 and the worst. Usually, it can't be that bad, right? Because, I mean, the Casino Royale one was kind of meant to be a comedy spoof, and then the production behind the scenes fell apart, and things was just going crazy. So the fact that that product is as it is kind of understandable. Never Say Never Again, if I remember correctly, is basically Thunderball, but how the screenwriter originally wrote it, because when they adapted it from the novel, it wasn't Ian Fleming who wrote the screenplay for Thunderball. It was somebody else, I believe, and might have been 2 people. And if I remember correctly, because I don't really research things going in, this is just what I know off the top of my head going into the film. I think they finished the script, but then during production they kind of went more and more off script, and then by the end of it, it was like a totally different thing from the script. So the one screenwriter had a really big problem with that, took it to court, blah blah blah, and then they were fighting it, I think, all the way through Her Majesty's Secret Service and Diamonds Are Forever, and I think that's the last time you see Blofeld, and the reason for that is because of the lawsuit. And then I think it was referenced again in one of the Roger Moore ones for one of the intros as a kind of a the official James Bond production versus the one scriptwriter guy or whatever. I think it's something like that. Yeah, you could do much more research than me. Like, I have a good understanding about, and that's the reason why we haven't seen Blofeld until the more recent Daniel Craig movies, is because this movie was kind of the response, or not response, but like the ending of the court deal where they're like, okay, you have to make a movie, you make it, and then that's it. And Sean Connery, who said he would never play James Bond ever again, that's why the name of the movie is called Never Say Never Again, because maybe contract-wise or lawyer-wise or whatever, he had to be involved with it because it's Thunderball, in a sense. Which is, I think, the 4th James Bond film, if I remember correctly. It was after Goldfinger, right? And so it's going to be very interesting to see, because this is around the same time as Octopussy, if I remember correctly. Might have been the same year. I think it was the same year. I mean, it was very neat location-wise and had some very interesting and memorable things in it. But overall, I kind of view that movie as not as good. But it's like, maybe this movie will make me say, no, actually, Octopussy was actually pretty good. Like, that's my impression going in to see Never Say Never Again. I'm under the impression this is a bad film. especially as a James Bond movie featuring the character of James Bond, but it's not the official production who's did the, right now I think they're on their, like, was it 26th film? How many James Bond movies have we gotten? Kind of excited, but at the same time, it's like once I see it, it's like that means all the older James Bond movies I've seen. So it's like there won't be any more after this. It's like it's just from here on out, it'll be just the newer James Bond movies. So it's like in some sense of a little bit sad going into watching Never Say Never Again. General consensus, it's like there might actually not be a bad movie. Like each James Bond like each actor who's played James Bond had a bad movie at one point for the James Bond things. Like in my opinion, it's like generally when you go to the Roger Moore era, a lot of people point out Moonraker as being bad, but it's actually pretty good. And then it's like Sean Connery, the Diamonds Are Forever is considered the worst of the Sean Connery ones in general. And it's like, it's more you watching it or going through it again, it's like, it's not really that bad. So I'm sort of having a theory where it's like, there is technically no bad James Bond film in general. You go Pierce Brosnan with the Die Another Day. It's like, yeah, it's over the top. Yeah, it's kind of bad in maybe technical sense. I'm not sure. That one's kind of weird. Once again, but that's the bad movie for the Pierce Brosnan era. And that's like Daniel Craig has, either Quantum of Solace or Spectre, depending on which one you think is better or worse. I think a lot of people, the only reason I would go with Quantum of Solace is because Quantum of Solace seems overall the more forgettable of the film, because at least Spectre you remember, or Spectre, at least it's a very memorable film, even though you feel like, well, compared to Skyfall and Casino Royale, it seems the more underrated one. I don't want to make this a 50-hour video because I definitely was thinking of maybe doing some top 10 list for James Bond movies and all that. But going through it, it's like I'm just wondering if there truly is a bad film. So it's like, is the reason why Never Say Never Again is bad is because it's not the same production company that did Octopussy and various other, all the ones that's done previously up to this point. So it's like it's a different production company, different studio, and it's like, is it bad just because of that? Is it scripting wise? Like, is it like Casino Royale bad, the 60s version? Or is it just more, it doesn't work as well, or comes off either forgettable or bland, sort of like Quantum of Solace? Like, out of all the James Bond films, I feel like that one was the more bland one overall. But I don't know if that's just me. Let me know in the comments below, which James Bond film do you think is either the most forgettable or most bland of the James Bond movies? Anyways, I don't think I've ever heard what the or who does the song for the main titles, because it's like usually James Bond songs generally do get played on the radio now and then. So it's like, I wonder if I've heard the song that's the theme from Never Say Never Again, but I never actually, I didn't clue in, oh, that's the theme to this film. Or I think it might have been spoiled for me because I was trying to track down a digital copy to watch just on either Amazon or iTunes for Never Say Never Again. So when I search Never Say Never Again, the first thing that pops up is music. So I think it might have been spoiled for me. I think it could be the Bee Gees, because that was the first one that appeared, but I'm not entirely sure. And even then, I don't remember if I actually heard the song, because I have the greatest hits for Bee Gees and I've listened to that, but I don't, Never Say Never Again, I don't think is on there, like if that is the title of the song. Assumingly, it's the title of the song. So that might actually be spoiled for me. But I lucked out on finding a overseas region-free Blu-ray copy of Never Say Never Again. So I kind of was very fortunate to find it for cheap. And so I'm watching it on Blu-ray. Hopefully the Blu-ray works, because otherwise then this review is not happening. So anyways, time to watch Never Say Never Again. I just watched Never Say Never Again. And I'm not gonna lie, I honestly think that it's not a terrible film. I had a hard time deciding if it was more on the bad side or the okay side of a James Bond film. Like, for a James Bond film, it kind of felt like, even though it had a bit of the 80s aesthetic and up-to-dateness of the 80s, it still felt like if this movie was done the way it was, but back then, instead of Thunderball, it wouldn't be... It would kind of fit right. Like, it felt like it was in the style of the Sean Connery older James Bond films. It was overall not as memorable, and I just felt that it was okay, but on the border of okay. So it's like in between okay and bad. Like, for the most part, I felt like it was bad just because, like, I feel like this movie is better than the Casino Royale James Bond spoof movie. But that's not really a high bar to pass. I'm just trying to think, because it's like, between this movie and Thunderball, I'm like, after watching Never Say Never Again, I'm like, I kind of would rather want to watch Thunderball for several reasons. Mainly because even though the chaotic battle at the end of the Thunderball with the several tons of people all underwater fighting it out, like almost like a ship battle or Star Wars ship battle type thing, but like underwater, and people with harpoons and the machines and all that, and it's like, it's crazy and over the top, and you don't know who's who in a sense, but it's just, it's kind of fun to watch. It does drag on really long, but then it's like this movie, it's like there was no major battle like that, and it was like, it just seemed, it felt a little more subdued, but then it also kind of felt like I felt like it repeated several things that was in prior James Bond films. For example, like the ending in the temple, kind of like, I'm trying to spoil per se, but it almost felt like I was watching You Only Live Twice. And like with that sort of crazy, sort of big bass sort of ending battle, only it was a little more smaller location. Like, a lot of the budget, I felt like, well, actually, I should actually have started off by saying I was wrong about the Bee Gees doing the main title song. So Bee Gees does have a song called Never Say Never Again, but it's actually, I don't know if it's a cover of this song or if it's an original song but with the same name. Because this one was definitely like, when it was like, the movie just starts off with the main titles, but it doesn't do anything special other than the 007 title cards pasted across, and I'm like, okay, this is definitely 80s just from the way they put that together and the way they presented. And it's like, the movie itself had some kind of cool ideas with what it was doing, but the funny thing is, it ran into the problem of, well, it's basically Thunderball, but it's different. Like, you got similar characters named, like Largos and Domino. I'm pretty sure those were characters in Thunderball. It's been a while since I've seen Thunderball, but seeing Never Say Never Again, there are certain moments in the film I'm like, oh, I kind of remember this from Thunderball in a sense. Like when the U.S. plane sort of goes down in the lake, and then Spectra comes in and sort of steals it or hides it. Like, I remember that being in a James Bond film prior. I can't remember if it was Thunderball, but I feel like it was Thunderball because that would kind of make sense script writing wise, and especially with the legal issues with this film and all that. But the neat ideas I was getting at is that, like, the opening sort of thing where it's like he's infiltrating this base per se in the middle of the, I'm not sure where he was. It seemed like a more jungle type area, bit of a fortress type area, and it's like he gets in and it's like, oh, it's shocking. It turns out it was a training course, and James Bond technically failed it because he died. But the funny thing is, watching this, it's like jumping right into it, but the having the song play, the song does not really work well with what's happening on screen. Like, if I was gonna do this opening scene, I would have had not especially that song play, because it wouldn't work with it, because tonally it just felt a little too either light, or like it didn't match the seriousness of what it could be set up wise. So it would have made more sense that not have the music play for that, have him go for the training course, but you don't know it's a training course because, well, that's the way they did in the movie. But when the reveal happens, you're kind of like, well, they were playing music over the scene that didn't really was serious, so it was kind of expected in a sense, or it softened. You're like, oh, well, of course it's a thing. Because if it was serious, the music wouldn't be playing for it. Like, it would have been taken more seriously if it was all dramatic in the sense there's no music and it's just sound and it's like you feel tense. But you don't feel any of that for the opening scene. And it's kind of unfortunate because it loses effect. There's like little things like that throughout the film. Some interesting editing choices, especially concerning a sex scene and fish tank montage back and forth. Like, I thought, oh, okay, cut it away to a new scene. Oh, no, it cuts back and then back and back, and then they play around, I guess, little gags and whatnot. That's another thing. The gags throughout this movie, I felt really kind of undermined it. And it's like, I felt like the gags, like, at least with, like, you know, let's call it the official James Bond franchise of movies, you know, the gags, yeah, some of them were didn't really work as well, and some of them were not as funny, but at least they were, I think, better overall. Like some of the dialogue in this movie, like, it felt like it was trying to not call back specifically to the Sean Connery era, but it just felt like it was like living in the shadow of it. So it was like, hey, you know, we have Sean Connery, we have to do Sean Connery type James Bond things per se. But then again, throughout the whole James Bond franchise, official franchise, there's like, you know, those one-liners and you know, little jokes, innuendo, stuff like that, and it's like, it kind of does all that. It's a paint-by-number James Bond film. That's what Never Say Never Again is. But it hits the notes, but the notes aren't exactly right. And I felt like some of it was a bit missed opportunity. Like, you got Max von Sydow as Blofeld. Awesome. I mean, he did a good job of what was there, but didn't really give it a lot. Kim Basinger, who I believe, I know her, I think she was in, I'm pretty sure she was in one of the Batman movies. So you got a decent cast. I really liked, I don't know the actor's name, but I really liked Felix's portrayal in this movie, but unfortunately his character did get sort of sidelined away because it's James Bond film, so he has to be the main guy. So it's like he always gets pushed off to the side in a sense, and he helps out in certain cases, and it's like that's about it. There's a whole absurd chase scene. I guess you can call it a chase scene. No, I'm not referring to the motorcycle scene. I'm talking about the scene where he's going around the shipwreck and he has the little tracker that's basically having all the sharks chase James Bond. Is probably my most favorite. This is hilarious, but at the same time kind of cool kind of moment scene wise chase. And it's just so absurd. I feel really bad for the shark or the sharks in general, because I don't know if they used fake sharks or whatever. Like, from the way it was shot, I'm like, that looks real. Like I have to look it up. I forgot to look it up on the credits if no animals were harmed during the making of this film. But it seems to me that shark got hit at 1 or 2 points, you know? And then also the scene with the horse. It looks like they literally jumped the horse off into the water. Not the far shot. The far shot is definitely absolutely fake, but the very close up of them hitting the water, that definitely didn't look like a fake horse. That looked like an actual horse jumping and falling upside down. If it is fake, man, it looks real. Same with the shark. Like, especially when the shark gets hit. The door scene, I feel like hitting the shark was definitely, there was some reversal and all that, but sorry if I'm jumping all over the place. I'm just trying to, there's bits and pieces of the movie where I remember as I'm talking about one thing or talking about another. A part of me wants to say this is in between okay and bad, but I'm kind of grouping it more towards the bad, because that's what it kind of felt like throughout the film from beginning to end. Either in the way they did it, I don't know if it's because I think the screenwriter, the one who fought it out in the court case or whatever, I think he was the one who ended up directing it, or at the very least he was very heavily involved in the process of the making of the film with the producing and all that. But it didn't feel like they had enough experience with making James Bond films. And it's kind of interesting because it's like, if this movie was done the way it was instead of Thunderball, yeah, it would have been an okay, decent James Bond film, but it's just the fact that it was done, I think, 20 or 30 years after Thunderball, and the fact that it's Thunderball it's on almost the same level of Thunderball, but Thunderball is much better. And even comparing it to the James Bond film that was released around the same time, which I believe was Octopussy, Octopussy felt like a much more better and more original James Bond film. But granted, that's the problem, is court case wise, I think Never Say Never Again had to be Thunderball, but the way he originally wrote it. Because otherwise, what's the point of this whole going through with the whole thing and, you know, preventing the James Bond franchise for playing with the Blofeld character for like several years, like couple decades, because they sort of had a bit of an FU with that one scene at the beginning of a Roger Moore film where they had him in the wheelchair, but you don't actually see the face of Blofeld and you don't hear his name, and it's just him with the cat in the wheelchair and a certain incident with a helicopter. But yeah, Never Say Never Again doesn't really, like, there's some parts I like about it, but it just overall was just, it feels like almost like James Bond light in a sense. If there's one issue I definitely had with the movie overall, I don't know if it was sound mixing or sound, not editing per se, but like the sound recording or the use of the sound recording, and like the ADR moments where they record the audio separately and then place it over. Usually, if the the audio recording is not good, they would bring in the actor into a booth to re-record certain lines, so that's ADR. There were several moments you could definitely tell ADR was used, like it was obvious. Not too obvious, but obvious enough that I picked it up right away. And then there's several, like, I don't know if it's the Blu-ray or my surround sound. I don't think so, because, I watched, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and the audio felt great in that overall. But I don't know if it was this specific Blu-ray disc or whatever, but the audio overall, it felt very low budget, or not low budget, but like very, I guess you could say amateurish, like somebody who's doing a student film. I really hate that criticism in general, but it just, I don't really have a way to describe it, like, especially early on, and it's like the sound effects of, him going through and shooting and all that, like, it felt very, like, there was parts where he shot with the gun, and it's like there's no muzzle flash, there's no any sort of, doesn't even look like the gun itself is shooting. It's just he's just holding it and going and the guy's going and dying. I don't know, it felt off overall. But that's just sound, and I don't know. I don't know if it's just me. I might just be picking things, but that's what I remember about the film I just watched. Another thing I gotta mention is, Sean Connery's a little bit on the older side. You can definitely tell in the way they, some of the scenes, like, my gosh, that I just remembered the whole fight scene in the, was it rehabilitation center or health center or whatever, health hospital. It felt like, in some cases, it was like almost like an old age home, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest type hospital type place. And the fight scene, it's so, like, I know the bad guys are supposed to give James Bond a little bit of leeway in order to, have him survive and carry on with his mission. But in this movie, it just felt like they definitely turned it up a bit. Like, he's working on the thing, and it's like, oh, you could very easily just, take care of him and kill him. Oh, no, I'm going to, try to kill him with the weight set, like. And then later on in the film, it's just a whole nother level with the girl and the gun in that cave area that echoes, like, that was way too, like, I couldn't even figure out the motivations of that character in a sense, because it's like it's your job to kill him, and you're not killing him, and you have the opportunity, you're supposed to take care of him, not like, I understand to a certain point, but it's like, it felt like almost every adversary that he came up against in this film was trying to drag it on enough so he can escape, or give James Bond, like, it felt very, I guess, predictable in a sense. There's also some pointless things, like when he puts down the jukebox and it's like and it's like playing the tango song, but then it cuts, like, there was no point in him putting the jukebox there and doing the music. And then there's another scene where it's like, where he's like, oh, I guess I'm crazy, and it's like shot a little bit off a bit, like he's off to the side a little bit, and I think she was right there, and then he's like, I guess I'm a little crazy, and then he does like a little bit of a whistle, and then it's like, the whistling goes nowhere. It just cuts to the next part of the scene. It's like you had opportunities to do interesting things with some of the either editing or villain type stuff, but they didn't really. Like, there's some ridiculous scenes in this, like I mentioned earlier about the shark and him being chased. That was ridiculous. And then you got They wanted to do like a more modern game instead of just playing cards. He's like, probably the director or the writer was like, oh, I'm sick and tired of, oh, James Bond's just playing Baccarat or poker. Only like, you know what? I'm going to modernize this. I'm going to update this to the 80s. And then it's like, you know, you have arcade machines in the casino, which I thought was a little, like, even in context of the 80s, I thought that stuck out a bit too much. The fact that he sits down with the bad guy to play a one-on-one futuristic sci-fi arcade game that shocks you as you're playing the game, like, very original, very creative. Like the idea, the execution, I'm like I was a bit confused watching it because it's like, which side's which? Like, I didn't understand the game visually with the blue and the red, and it's like, okay, they're shooting sections, but then you have two nukes and you can sort of just throw it at them, and if it goes through, I guess because they're distracted that they don't see the nuke coming, then it's like, it's a very interesting, I felt, original game. I don't know if it's an actual game. I don't think so. I think this is movie magic, but it was absurd having Sean Connery, as old as he was at the time, as like him playing video games against the villain. And it's like, that was like, never say never again. Had its moments, but overall I just felt flat. I don't know, I kind of like Thunderball better, but then again, it's been a while since I watched Thunderball, and actually after watching this, I kind of really want to go back and watch Thunderball now. Like, you remember, I believe at the beginning of that movie there was the jetpack scene, which, by the way, was actually, there was an actual jetpack machine that was built that somebody actually built themselves, or when you see the jetpack scene in that Thunderball, that's actually real. That's not like strings and a crane or anything. That's an actual jetpack. But why I'm bringing up the jetpack scene, because in this movie, Never Say Never Again, there is a random scene from them getting from a submarine to the underwater little coastal little river area thing. Underground river, I think you would call it. And he's like, oh, we gotta try out this secret special thing that only certain people know about. And the Navy guy's like, how did you know about that? I know about that because Russian heard it, whatever, intel, whatever. And then it's like, they go to do it where it's like, it launches a missile out of the submarine, and then it's like a little jetpack thing, but it's them clearly just sort of standing there, and it's like, it's so bad. And then they land on the thing just to get into a scuba diving suit and then going into the water. They could have just went from the submarine to them scuba diving in the water. They didn't even need that whole scene of them going in the little jetpack thing and going whoosh and then landing on the coastal section. Like, oh my gosh, that was so unnecessary. But at the same time, I kind of liked the movie because it did something so weird and out of left field. Like, I don't know if that's an actual real thing, like the jetpack thing, but granted, the fact that this is not an actual, part of the official James Bond franchise, I can see maybe they're just being like, oh, I'm going to create something original, just like the video game from earlier in the film. I'm still a little torn between this movie being bad and borderline okay. I am leaning a little more on the bad section, though. To be fair, off the top of my head, this is still better than Casino Royale. But then again, there's still a couple parts in Casino Royale I really liked, especially the music in Casino Royale, the 1960s version. Like, for example, The Look of Love by Dusty Springfield. That is absolutely, I consider that the James Bond theme for that movie, and could very well easily have been a James Bond theme. And then you got the ending credit song, which is always a favorite in my heart, with the sort of comedic, they all went to Casino Royale and, and they all died and blah, blah, blah. And that song, the one where it's like, oh, and several of them went up to heaven, but except for one, and it's like I like that ending song, and also the fact that the ending of that movie is just crazy nonsense. And I mean, that movie in general is nonsense. Actually, now I'm starting to think maybe I do like Casino Royale more than Never Say Never Again, because at least with Casino Royale, I mean, you got the weirdest stuff happening and the transitions, and just I remember that movie so much for how bad it is. Where Never Say Never Again, it just felt a little more safe by the numbers, but at the same time had some cool memorable moments, but at the same time very bad memorable moments, but it's not on the same level of bad as, say, Casino Royale. So I don't know, I'm at a toss-up of which movie's actually better now that I think about it. It's like, which one do I enjoy more? Like, if I had the choice between rewatching Never Say Never Again and Casino Royale, the 60s version, which version would I watch? Or not version, which one would rather watch right now? And it's like, kind of want to see Casino Royale. It's stupid, it's funny, it has its moments, ridiculous, and then it's like Never Say Never, it's like, and it's like, it's weaker overall and forgettable. So it's like, do I want to watch something that's a little more tame and just safe, I guess? And even then it wasn't really safe. I don't know. But those are the two movies I would consider the worst James Bond films, or films that feature James Bond in a sense, not including knockoffs, spin-offs, or knockoffs, I would say, or versions that are inspired by, like, I haven't seen the In Like Flint series, or I think the closest James Bond sort of knockoff would be Austin Powers. I've seen all three of those. I love all three of those. Those are great spoof movies. And that's the reason why the Daniel Craig movies, they've been kind of staying away from the diabolical Dr. Evil type villain, world domination type thing, because Austin Powers did it so well. Like, that's why I kind of liked Kingsman. Kingsman was kind of the stepping stone between campy, over the top, but still serious and fun at the same time. So it's like, will James Bond ever go back to a more campy or more over the top, like just like the olden days? And it's like, will they ever go back, or will they just keep trying to do serious until it literally starts hurting them money wise, and then maybe try something drastic? Or after Daniel Craig, maybe they'll try something totally different. I'm curious to see where the James Bond franchise goes. But anyways, I want to know what you think of Never Say Never Again. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. I want you to have a nice day or night or whatever time you watch this. Have a nice whenever. Check out my other stuff. It's entirely up to you. No pressure. This video's decent, kind of like that one. Those ones are something, I try my best, certain videos. I'm struggling.